One of the other things you wrote in your book at the time was you felt like this is Sting's time. It's time to pull the trigger on Sting as champion. We know Sting is ultimately going to get that opportunity, but it winds up being a Great American Bash the coming year. What, in hindsight, would it have been a better call for Sting to win the belt here at Starcade?
Might have been. I can't argue against that point. You never, did would we have captured lightning in a bottle, as the old expression goes? Maybe. I can see it working. So yeah, it'd been worth a try if that was of the committee's mindset. But there were still people on the committee that I don't know had developed the confidence in a young Sting that they should have. Just
That's
my
really what I was going for is, do you think that person was Ric Flair? Like, was Rick hesitant to drop it to Sting? We know he's going to be steadfast, a year later or 2 years later when he doesn't want to drop the title to this guy and he wants to drop it to that guy. Was that an
yeah.
issue with Sting here in late 89?
You know what? It might have been, Connie. I don't. I mean, and Rick had his, as he should. He had his allies in the booking committee. So, and I know that those guys knew how much being the champion meant to Nate. So any talk of having someone else in that role uh, would fall on, I don't want to say deaf ears, but would fall on the dissident ears. It's just not going to it's not going to fly as much as some people wanted it to. So, but that's the whole issue about a giant committee. God damn, it's hard to come to a consensus. And then the guys that don't get their way pout. So, or clam up or whatever. It was a nightmare. The whole concept was a nightmare. And, but on your question on Sting, yeah, it might have been a good idea. I certainly would say this, based on the history of that whole period, it probably would have been worth a try.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Let's talk about Kevin Sullivan. He was worth a try. He's going to be joining you to do color. I mean, you did color with a lot of people in this era, but how did you enjoy working with Kevin Sullivan? And how did you enjoy working with Michael Hayes?
Oh, well, they both had similar qualities. They both had great product knowledge. They both understood what they were selling.
Yes.
And they both had personalities. They knew how to get over and get talent over. I like working with both those guys. I've been really blessed, Connie, in my career. Uh, I don't know how many more years I got left, but I've been really blessed with working with some of the most talented, fun people that you can imagine. Sullivan was very cerebral, very, very smart, calculating, uh, had a had a had an affinity for the bizarre. That was his style. So and he said, "Well, how's that work?" Well, it's like a director of a movie series that are horror movies. That's their forte. And Sully was a little bit in that vein. He liked the bizarre and the macabre. I've always wanted to say that on the show, macabre. Uh, and Michael was just, Southern redneck Michael Hayes, who's very intelligent, hence his long tenure at WWE. Michael's made a great living for himself. I'm very happy for him. He's one of the few guys that I can expect to hear from to check on my health.
Mm.
And we haven't seen each other, and I don't know how long. I don't even remember the last time. That's not good. So anyhow, they were great, Connie. They really were. They were easy to work with. Uh, they wanted more information. They pushed the committee to give them more info as far as creative direction is concerned, and it paid off in their broadcast. They didn't miss any sellable points, and they knew what a soundbite was. And I thought we worked out fine.
One of the new talent who's going to be coming in, who was actually pursued by the WWF, and I don't think that enough people talk about that. George Gonzalez. We know we're going to see him as Elegante here in WCW, but Do you remember there being, I wouldn't call it a bidding war, but interest from the WWF? I mean, we know eventually he goes there, but
No, I
it
want
would
to
have
talk
been
about.
interesting
I want to talk about that haircut. I
his
wanna
or
talk about
yours, because yours is
mine.
pretty spectacular.
Yeah, you kidding me? I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Might have been hungover that morning when I combed my hair. Atlanta was a fun town to get that for that to happen. Well, George is a sweetheart.
Yes.
He really and truly was. He was amazed and sometimes seemingly bewildered by the customs of the Americans. I know he enjoyed the American women. He's always flirting with somebody, female. Not there's anything wrong with that. Nice guy, but he had absolutely he didn't know come here from Sikkim. There's a Gary Michael Capetta, the world's most dangerous announcer. But he had no product knowledge, Connie. He didn't understand the nuances of the wrestling business. Sometimes you need to know what not to do.
Yeah.
And he didn't have that that trait yet. He had no product knowledge. I mean, locking up was a big deal. You know, I worked with him for hours one afternoon on doing promos, and it was just a it was I didn't lose my patience in front of him, but it was a good. You know, he just had no feel.
Right.
And he had a decent personality, but he just had no feel for the product. And wrestling fans have always been smart. They've always had a sharp eye, and you know they can when they see somebody that they realize is unskilled, they don't react well to that. So that's kind of how I saw George. But nice guy, sweetheart of a guy. Hell, and he made good money and in his two stints in North America. But he died broke. People took advantage of him, and I know that I think it was Bruno Lau or Harvey Whippleman that helped him a lot
That's right.
with money, and he had 6-figure years, plenty of them, but he didn't know how to save money. He was a 7'7" poor basketball player who was an attraction. And I kept trying to explain the attraction concept to anybody that would listen. But god dang, he was just you see him once a year, twice a year. So he makes the territory, one shot here and there you go. But we overexposed him. And the more we overexposed him, the less confidence the audience had in him. They didn't
Right.
care. They didn't want to see him.